Today's story is about romance, obsession, ambition, and betrayal that spiraled into a deadly encounter. What started as a whirlwind romance quickly descended into episodes of jealousy and suspicion. When a beautiful former ballerina met a recent widower at a glamorous political fundraiser, they shocked everyone by getting married just 13 days later. It was what fairy tales are made of, which in the end left those around them wondering how a love story that began with such intensity could veer so tragically and dangerously off course. Eventually, it would be up to investigators to delve into their tumultuous history and discover what happened behind closed doors when a reunion turned fatal. Hi, everyone. We are back together in the same room, and welcome to episode 42 of the Darklivity podcast. I'm your host, Kimbyrleigha, and I'm here with my co-host and my best friend in the world, my husband, Jonathan.
Hi. Darklivity is the dark downward slope into the degradation of the human mind and the consequences that such darkness bring to light.
If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome back. I am no longer sick, so we can be in the same room.
Finally.
Sorry about that for our last video. I hope it didn't distract you too much. But I wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone, and I cannot believe it is 2025. I hope that it's your best year ever. And if you want to keep up with us in a more personal way, we did want to tell you we have a channel called Actually Us, where we share more about our lives behind the scenes of all of our videos we do on here. We are currently renovating a 1940s house right now and also giving some tips about our favorite things for newborns because we just got through that category. But without any more delay, today's story has been in the news a lot, especially in the past few weeks, but for months, mostly because the trial ended not too long ago. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we are here to give you a deep dive, not just what happened in the legal process. This is also a very controversial case, one that I was even torn about for a while. I watched the entire trial, and of course, I have my own thoughts and opinions, as I'm sure most of you do as well. We would love to hear yours after you listen to everything we present to you. Just remember to be respectful because we never know if family members of the victims could be watching and reading the comments. Let's start by introducing you to Ashley Christine Byers. She was born on December 5th of 1991, and from the moment she first stepped onto the dance floor, it was clear that she had a passion for dancing. By the age of 8, Ashley had dedicated herself to pursuing a professional career in ballet. Her commitment to her craft was obvious, with her training schedule being incredibly intense. Sadly, despite her dedication to her rigorous ballet training, Ashley faced challenges along the way. As she got older, she found herself towering over her peers, standing at an impressive 5'9". Many believed her height would make her better suited for basketball than the stage. However, Ashley's poise, her elegance, and exceptional dancing skills left spectators in awe. And for some reason, I always thought that you actually had to be not just slender, but tall to be a professional ballerina. But with some research, I found out it's actually between 5'2" and 5'8". That's interesting because I'm 2 inches too short.
Despite setbacks because of her height, Ashley stayed determined to succeed. She realized how important proper training was, so she dropped out of high school to focus entirely on her dance career. She knew that she had to immerse herself in the performing arts to reach her full potential. So Ashley joined the Maryland Youth Ballet, an organization that's preparing young dancers for professional careers in the arts for over 40 years. MYB gives its students the skills and mindset needed to succeed in the competitive dance world. Even though her height was initially a challenge, it didn't take away from her talent. Her graceful movements and perfect technique showed just how dedicated she was to her passion.
She was actually made for a ballet after all. However, Ashley's height did mean that she missed out on certain opportunities. Her height often caused her to be considered outside the traditional ballet mold, making it more challenging to land roles in prestigious dance companies. Recognizing the limitations this posed for dancers of diverse backgrounds, Ashley set her sights on a dream of creating a space where dancers of all heights could practice, train together, and thrive. As Ashley got older, her dancing skills continued to shine. But those who truly knew her were impressed by more than just her talent. It was her generosity, her willingness to help others that truly set her apart. Whether it was a friend in need or a stranger, Ashley was always first to lend a helping hand. When it came to her friends, Ashley proved to be an incredible support system and a shoulder to cry on. She consistently put their needs before her own to ensure that everyone was cared for. Ashley's selflessness and joy were infectious, spreading positivity wherever she went. Listening to music was one of Ashley's favorite pastimes, her favorite genres being classical music and country, and one of Ashley's greatest passions was animals. Ashley cared deeply about all living beings, which actually led her to adopt a vegan diet. She believed that living creatures deserve to be treated with respect and compassion. Whether it was helping a turtle cross the road, assisting a hawk, rescuing dogs, lizards, cats, spiders, snakes, possums, or any other animal in need, her compassion and empathy extended to all creatures, regardless of their size or species. And I have to say, I am the same. I won't kill anything because I feel like it's the only life that they have. And I'm scared that it will just also lead to bad things in my life. If I take the life of another creature, I usually just pick it up and throw it outside, or I have you do it.
Yeah, I'll always pick up the spiders and throw them out into the wild.
I like spiders.
Ashley wasn't just dedicated to helping animals, she also loved spending time outdoors. Even though she spent hours inside dance studios perfecting her craft, she cherished being out in nature whenever she could. She especially enjoyed working in her expansive garden, which she filled with a variety of fruits, vegetables, and herbs that she grew herself. Ashley took a lot of pride in maintaining her garden and appreciated the effort it took to keep it thriving. She used what she grew to cook, bake, and share amazing vegan dishes with all of her friends and family.
Although everyone loved Ashley for her personality, she also was incredibly gorgeous in a very classical way, and everyone around her took notice. Ashley had this glossy brown hair, bright blue eyes, and her appearance was striking yet elegant, attracting attention wherever she went. And as an adult, Ashley pursued a career that aligned with her passion for dance. She instructed children's ballet and even sewed costumes for their shows. During a brief period in her life, Ashley even explored the possibility of a career in modeling. She definitely has the look of a model. I mean, she's got a gorgeous face, the slender build, and all that work in ballet, that leads to a toned physique as well. And she dared to step out of her comfort zone and posed in sexy lingerie on city streets and even in wedding dresses. However, she couldn't quite create a successful modeling career despite her best efforts. That's a really hard industry to break into. Even though she had the beauty and the talent, the industry itself proved very challenging for her. And throughout her life, Ashley dreamed of something more, something bigger. While she loved her work in dance and in modeling, there was something she wanted even more than that. She wanted her own family. Like most women growing up, Ashley had dreamed about marrying her Prince Charming, having children one day, and being loved by someone special. She dreamed of creating a happy and fulfilling life, centered around love and a big family. At one point, Ashley had been married, but that marriage ended in divorce. Ashley knew deep down that she would make the perfect wife and mother one day. Her nurturing, compassionate nature, her creativity, and her artistic abilities made her well suited for this role in her perspective. She envisioned creating an environment where love, laughter, and imagination would thrive.
And according to a now very well-known Vanity Fair article, Ashley also admired Donald Trump for years.
You could say that he was also one of her passions. And yes, we are going to tell you all the details. This Vanity Fair article was talked about a lot outside of the trial, but inside the four walls of the courtroom, any political details were left out. And I think everything in a story is important. So here we go. But try your best to be mature, no matter which way you lean politically, because this case supersedes the differences that you might have. This is a murder case after all. But proceed.
Ashley met Donald Trump in 2015 at a campaign event. She said he was so impressed by her passion for America and her knowledge of firearms that he offered her a job. She also spent a lot of time at Donald Trump's luxurious Mar-a-Lago resort and traveled on his private plane. These unforgettable experiences made a big impact on her.
She even documented them in her diary. In her diary entries, Ashley shared her observations about Donald Trump's behavior during these flights that she would go on. She wrote that Donald Trump would often spend a significant amount of time watching himself on TV. She wrote about how Donald Trump had asked her opinion about a tie to wear on one occasion. And this gesture alone made her feel valued and acknowledged by the Trump campaign. Several days later, Ashley received a phone call from Donald Trump himself. Ooh, it sounds like she kind of had a crush on him the way that she's writing about him in her diary.
So in her diary, Ashley wrote that during one conversation, Donald Trump called her a bombshell and promised her a role in the White House if he became president. He even referred to her as my little girl and baby, which made her feel validated. However, when Donald Trump was later shown a picture of Ashley, he appeared confused and claimed he had no idea who the person in the photograph was. In the summer of 2016, Ashley worked at Donald Trump's campaign in Sarasota, Florida. Her main role was to rally support from evangelical Christian voters and attend campaign events. She was often seen on video tossing items into the crowd and hyping up the audience at the rallies.
Also known as a hype man, this would be a hype woman in her case.
During this time, another prominent figure in the Republican presidential race, Dr. Ben Carson, ended his campaign for the Republican nomination, bringing his presidential bid to a close.
But as fate would have it, Ashley found herself at Ben's Palm Beach, Florida residence. Of course she did. At this gathering, she met a man named Doug Benefield, a slightly older but undeniably handsome man. And Doug was a familiar face at Ben Carson's residence because he was one of the physician's largest donors. His presence at this gathering was not surprising given his close relationship with Dr. Carson as well. So let me tell you more about Doug. He was born in Palo Alto, California on October 2nd of 1961. Doug Benefield spent his early years in Huntsville, Alabama. He graduated from Huntsville High School, class of 1980, with a reputation for being a champion wrestler. After graduating high school, Doug enrolled at Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. His father and brother, who had already graduated from that same university, influenced his choice to go there. Doug's stay at A&M was memorable as he was a founding member of the Aggie Cowboys fraternity, which later was renamed Beta Theta Pi.
While studying at Texas A&M, Doug found a unique way to support himself by using his artistic skills to paint murals on building walls, showcasing his incredible talent. Doug's passion for art had been evident from a young age, and interestingly, he earned his undergraduate degree in biology in 1984, not in art or history as one might expect from someone so creative. After graduating, Doug joined the U.S. Navy in 1986 to serve his country. He completed aviation officer candidate school and became a naval flight officer. And in this role, Doug embarked on a rewarding career, serving as a flight officer pilot and feeling privileged to pilot these incredible aircraft. In 1999, Doug was recruited to serve as a mine warfare instructor in Charleston, South Carolina. And during his Navy career, he rose through the ranks quite quickly, retiring that same year with the rank of Lieutenant Commander 04. And after retiring from the Navy, Doug began a new chapter. He owned and operated Kiva Han, a restaurant in Charleston. But his career didn't stop there. Doug also served in the U.S. government as a security and communications consultant, using his expertise to contribute to various projects and initiatives.
Doug was known to be very compassionate and selfless, dedicating his time and energy to helping others. He served on the boards of various organizations, including the Wounded Warrior Corporation, Coolbridge Solar, Centurion Systems Incorporated, and Scientific Environmental Design. In addition to serving on the boards of those organizations, Doug also founded Benny Ltd. This was a company that specialized in providing technology solutions for the healthcare industry. And his co-founding of private equity ventures also marked his career. This venture focused on providing investment opportunities and guidance for startups and small and medium-sized enterprises. I also have to mention, Doug, if you couldn't tell, was very intelligent, and he held patents for various inventions that I can't even wrap my brain around, like a communication system that utilizes free space optics, task ambient HVAC systems, don't ask me what they are, but they have to do with technology for communication, energy, air conditioning, and more. When Doug first moved to Charleston, South Carolina, he met a woman named Renee, and their relationship quickly blossomed. Doug had previously been married when he was 28. However, his first marriage only lasted 6 months, but he found love again when he and Renee started dating. In 2001, Doug and Renee tied the knot for his second marriage, and this one stuck. And a few years later, they welcomed their daughter, Eva, into the world.
And as a Christian, Doug's dedication to his faith was clear to everyone around him. He started his morning with devotionals and prayer, finding peace and purpose in his spiritual practices. An early riser, Doug was often up by 5:30 a.m., and instead of hitting the snooze button, he would spend those quiet hours studying the Bible and strengthening his connection with Jesus.
In addition to his personal devotions, Doug shared his wisdom and positivity with his daughter. They engaged in a daily tradition of Doug sending Eva uplifting Bible verses and positive messages. Eva cherished these thoughtful gestures, and starting her day with a message from her dad became a ritual between father and daughter. Eva, like her dad, was very artistic, especially when it came to drawing. Music also played a significant role in Doug's life. He loved Frank Sinatra and praise music. He considered anything related to God to be a good song. Whenever Doug left his house, he would make sure to leave the praise music playing for the angels. Doug also dedicated himself to a regimen of intense workouts, training with the reputable fitness groups such as The Tribe and CrossFit. His life revolved around health and wellness. He stuck to a very healthy diet and worked out whenever possible. People who knew Doug described him as someone who would go to extraordinary lengths to help others. He possessed a rare ability to make people feel better just by being around them, and his infectious positivity had a profound impact on those in his friendship circle. He was popular because of his generosity and positivity. However, a tragic event occurred in December of 2015, and it forever changed Doug's life. On December 2nd, his 15-year-old daughter, Eva, found herself in a desperate situation when she couldn't get into their home through the front door. She rang the doorbell over and over again and knocked, but to her surprise, nobody answered. This was concerning, so she decided to crawl through the bushes and peer into the home's windows. That's when she discovered the blinds were open, and she made out the silhouette of her mother, Renee, lying motionless on the ground inside. Terrified, Eva fled from the house and ran to her neighbors to get help. That is so scary, this poor girl, and she's so young. And I could not stop thinking about how that would affect her for the rest of her life.
And the neighbor, realizing the seriousness of the situation, rushed to Doug's residence without hesitation. They kicked in the front door and entered the home, only to discover the devastating truth that 56-year-old Renee Benefield had tragically passed away. Her cause of death was later determined to be an undiagnosed heart disorder.
Cannot even imagine how scary that is. And I hear that more and more.
Right. Renee's unexpected passing left Doug, who had always been a steadfast support in his daughter's life, utterly heartbroken. Despite his grief, he showed incredible strength and resilience. Eva, deeply impacted by the loss of her mother, described her father as her rock that she could lean on. Doug suddenly found himself taking on the roles of both parents, but he made it a priority to ensure Eva felt safe and supported. He encouraged her to open up about anything, whether it was struggles with her friends, challenges she faced with boys, and letting her know that he was always there for her.
Eva was also raised with the belief that everything happened for a reason, so she remained strong and grateful for the life that she had with her father still being there for her. And it makes me sad because I know what's going to happen later. But let's jump back to when Doug met Ashley. They had actually spoken on the phone prior to meeting in person at Dr. Ben Carson's house. Ashley began corresponding with Doug days before this event when he was identified as a large money political donor. It wasn't long before their exchanges became more personal, eventually getting into discussions about what each of them sought in a relationship. Even though, quite frankly, Doug wasn't seeking a relationship, but there must have been some kind of connection over the phone, because I'm sitting here thinking the first thing she saw were dollar signs. I mean, she hadn't even met him, and already they were having these personal conversations, so I have to point out any red flags that I see, because there's going to be a lot of them. Doug is 54 at the time, and Ashley's only 23. That alone may not be a red flag to everyone, but I'm going to count it as one since I know this case so well. Along with the red flag of being flattered by rich men like Donald Trump. Again, not always a red flag, but with what I know, I'm counting it as another one. You might wonder what Doug's first impression of Ashley was. Well, as Doug finally arrived at the event, he immediately honed in on this young, blue-eyed, brown-haired beauty. She was gorgeous and already giving him attention on those phone calls. He actually said she was the most beautiful person he had ever laid eyes on. They shared conservative values and respect for the Second Amendment, which actually laid the foundation for their initial connection. Both of them were passionate about firearms, and Ashley always carried a gun for protection. Many women feel the need because we know from cases we've done here and on my channel that many women fall victim to the hands of male violence. So there's nothing wrong with carrying a firearm in and of itself. But I just have to mention, she snuck this firearm into an event that night by putting it in her bra. She was very proud of that.
This gun was one of the first things Doug noticed about Ashley that night. He spotted one tucked away in her purse and another concealed inside her bra, which only heightened his attraction to her. Ashley, in turn, was immediately intrigued by the older, wealthy man who lavished her with flattery and attention. And after that night, Doug couldn't hide his excitement anymore. They exchanged numbers, and he sent her a series of laughing emojis, smiley faces, and exclamation points to show his happiness. In one message, he wrote, "Love the time with you, Ashley Oakley," playfully comparing her to Annie Oakley, the legendary sharpshooter.
He's already giving her a pet name, I see. That was fast. And fast would be another red flag in this case. I always say sometimes you just know, but other times you just don't know better. And this would probably be categorized as the latter. The initial spark of attention quickly developed into an unstoppable flow of communication between them. Ashley and Doug texted all the time, nonstop, all throughout the night, exchanging witty remarks and getting to know each other on a deeper level, if you can, by text. By the following morning, Ashley had taken a liking to Doug and referred to him as my dear. Now she's giving him sort of a pet name as well. After just one night, they only met the night before. Ashley also expressed her gratitude, thanking the Lord for bringing them into each other's lives. Oh, and she's also appealing to Doug's religious side. Exactly. So I wanted to add that. Let's please remember Doug lost his wife tragically only 9 months before this. He was still grieving, and sometimes it feels nice when you are given attention. It fills a void, and Doug was definitely not done healing. Several days after Ashley and Doug met, Doug had a week-long business trip to Israel, and during this trip, he continued to text Ashley nonstop. He's even in another country, and he's texting her all the time, maintaining their connection even while he was busy overseas.
Ashley quickly became Doug's new priority, and their connection grew even stronger when she expressed interest in joining him on his next trip.
And I realized when two people have chemistry, things can happen pretty fast. I mean, it kind of happened with us, but before that, we got to know each other as friends for 3 years, like you said, so it wasn't exactly fast.
Things did move quickly, however, between Ashley and Doug. They exchanged romantic quotes, heart emojis, Bible verses, and song lyrics to convey their feelings for one another. By September 1st, just 6 days after their initial meeting at Ben Carson's house, they were already telling each other, "I love you."
Wow, okay. Now that is fast. It's only 6 days without even knowing each other before this. And I may be old school, but I'm kind of the mindset that love develops over time. True love anyway. I think you can lust someone that quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 4 red flags and counting.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like lust. And in my experience, taking time to get to know someone first before sleeping with them always seems to work better.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because it's definitely lost at this point, and we're going to have facts to prove that because of what happens next. During the 13 days they knew each other, the two were wrapped in this cocoon of mutual love bombing and promises of an idyllic life together. So much so, on the 13th day, the two of them got married.
Crazy.
Yes, they did, in a secret ceremony. And there were definitely reasons why they wanted to keep it a secret. This whole relationship was a secret to the person who should have mattered the most in Doug's life, his grieving 15-year-old daughter, Eva, who had just lost her mother not even a year before this. If Doug had truly fallen in love this fast, I think it was too soon to bring a new woman into his daughter's life. But let's keep going for now. Within days of their secret wedding, Ashley packed up her life in Florida with her golden retriever, Sully, and her cat to become stepmother to Doug's 15-year-old daughter in South Carolina. Yep. She had never even met Eva, and they were about to drop a bomb on this poor teenager. Doug's dedication to his faith actually played a big role in the decision to get married so soon because he believed that you needed to wait until your wedding night before engaging in physical intimacy. So what do we say? Facts. Lust. He knew that his friend Trip Kameni was an ordained Episcopal pastor, so Doug reached out to him with the idea of performing his and Ashley's wedding ceremony. However, considering the only 2-week time frame that had passed since Ashley and Doug initially met, Trip was hesitant. However, he ultimately agreed to fulfill his friend's request, knowing that Doug needed someone he trusted to be by his side on this special, or shall we say secret, day. The wedding was set to be intimate, and Doug did not invite his 15-year-old daughter, Eva, to this event. In fact, Eva was completely unaware of her father's relationship with Ashley at all, let alone the fact that he was now marrying her.
And later, Tommy Benefield, Doug's cousin, shared his confusion over Doug's decision not to invite any friends or family to the wedding. Tommy believed Doug knew they would try to talk him out of it. On September 6, 2016, Ashley and Doug exchanged vows in a private ceremony at St. Michael Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And then Doug eventually broke the news to his teenage daughter Eva that a new woman had entered his life and that they were married. And of course, Eva was stunned, especially since her mother had passed away just a few months earlier. Ashley's arrival dramatically altered Eva's world. Initially, Doug encouraged Ashley to bond with Eva, believing that she needed a maternal figure in her life. However, the age gap between them, with Ashley being only 9 years older, made her feel more like a big sister than a mother.
Already, I see so many issues with this. It seems very rushed, and this is just speculation. But what I know about Ashley and how much she bragged about the attention that rich, powerful, older men like Donald Trump gave her, I would guess that she had her mind set on finding the same type of guy to take care of her, provide for her. And I don't want to call her a gold digger because I also think it's okay to have a type. It's okay to have standards, to want more for your life, and it's even okay to want to be provided for. But it all seems too rushed, almost like Ashley gave Doug some kind of ultimatum, like she was rushing it somehow. I could be wrong, though.
Right, especially because Doug had promised Eva that he wouldn't move on quickly, but that's exactly what he ended up doing.
Yeah, and I would truly feel like he replaced my mother, or he was trying to, if I were Eva. Ashley walked into her new life expecting a stepdaughter who would welcome her with open arms, but instead, she was met with an angry, resentful teenager, and rightfully so. For the first 2 days of their meeting, Eva was actually told, she was lied to, and told that Ashley was her dad's new girlfriend. And that would have been a lot for her to deal with in and of itself. But it was only a few days later when Eva was told that Ashley was actually her new stepmother, this imposter, this stranger, and she was expected to learn to love her. I think you can imagine how that went over with a grieving teenager. And Ashley and Doug began fighting almost immediately. There's trouble in paradise. And most of their fights centered around Eva. It's almost like Doug had 2 teenagers at each other's throats. I mean, truly, because they could have been sisters. They were 9 years apart. That's really tough. Despite this, both Eva and Ashley made an effort to bond. I mean, at least they tried. Ashley tried to connect with Eva by sharing video clips of her favorite ballet routines, and they went shopping for houseplants. They brought them back together. They arranged them together in the house in mason jars. And this was an opportunity to spend some quality time together. However, things gradually deteriorated between Ashley and Eva, despite their initial efforts. Only 1 month later, Ashley confided in a friend, expressing her concerns about the relationship. She feared that Doug would eventually choose Eva over her, and this left her to be insecure. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. He should be choosing his daughter over a woman that he just met, period. Like, no questions. To even voice that concern is kind of concerning. And the tension between them only intensified when Doug allowed Eva's best friend to move into the house. And we're going to call her Sarah to protect her identity. This was an already unstable living environment, and now they were adding another teenager to the mix. And the combination of two hormonal teens and Ashley living with them proved to be a recipe for disaster. And as a result, the relationship between Ashley and Eva continued to deteriorate, further straining the entire household.
I can imagine, but over time, about 3 months by January 2017, it seemed like things between Ashley and Doug were improving. They began engaging in a daily 5-year question and answer journal together.
And you can do these with a partner, and that seems kind of cool to bond, I guess. And when Ashley and Doug did it, the journal prompted both of them to reflect on their lives, and their answers were very revealing. One prompt asked, if you could go back in time and change something, what would it be? And now, if you're the audience, think of what Doug would respond. If you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be? Doug responded, be with Ashley my whole life. They seem like teenagers.
They seem like high school kids, for sure.
Another prompt asked, who do you feel closest to? And Ashley's answer was, Doug. She stated, I never want to be without him. Again, doesn't this sound like high schoolers?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that these are great communication exercises when done truthfully and thoughtfully.
And it's not really truthfully and thoughtfully because she's the closest to her own mother. And we're going to learn that they had a very deep relationship and close relationship. So maybe in the moment, who are you close with today?
Right.
Okay. So proceed.
So things may have been improving for a while, but as time went on, they began to unravel. By June, Ashley came across her stepdaughter Eva's diary and discovered that Eva held deep resentment towards her. This revelation led to a heated altercation between Ashley and Doug, culminating in an intense shouting match.
Why is Ashley invading her stepdaughter's privacy? She's reading her diary. I don't think that's cool at all. That should be private. And I do understand as a parent, which I don't consider Ashley in this situation with Eva, we do need to be mindful of the things our children may be doing. And sometimes we do need to check on them, whether that's looking through their journal or their phone.
But not Ashley.
That's what I'm saying. I said, as parents, and I don't consider her a parent. But this seemed to be more nosy and fishing for things and not anything to do with Eva's well-being.
Right. It seems like an information gathering session for Ashley, and then she went right to Doug to complain.
Exactly. You can't make someone like you or love you, and it's clear why Eva was having a hard time. And this is when Ashley began to tell those close to her that Doug had a scary side to him, an angry and frightening side. These arguments would escalate, and he would scream and even punch walls. We're going to be inserting a picture for you to see this. But not only that, he punched Ashley's golden retriever, Sully, in the face, and he knocked this dog out cold. Doug actually admitted this in text messages and later during couples therapy, which we will get to. And apparently, according to Ashley, if she was showing affection to her dog, Doug would kick the dog in retaliation. He wanted all of Ashley's attention at all times. In another frightening incident, he actually threw their 13-year-old cat down the stairs in an uncontrollable rage.
And if all this wasn't unsettling enough, the couple's shared love for firearms added a very dangerous element to their conflicts. During another heated argument, Doug impulsively grabbed a gun and threw it against the wall.
And the thing is, they were always concealed carrying. They had guns around all the time. And another time, Doug took one of his guns and he fired into their ceiling in the kitchen. And it was kind of like a warning shot. And clearly at this point, I'm going to categorize this relationship as toxic. And I think that they just brought out the worst in one another. In a written statement, Doug described the event with the dog, Sully, and he said, quote, Sully starts to jump up from underneath the table, and I sadly just hit him, end quote. Later, Doug confided in his friend Tripp about the hole that he punched in the wall and the bullet he fired into the ceiling. Doug expressed deep regret for his impulsive actions.
In one message, he says, quote, "Who got me so mad, Ashley? I told her about the wall. I told her about the gun. I told her we argued. Common denominator is you. Until you, I have never punched a dog or shot a gun. Look in the mirror yourself. I punched the dog because you got me so mad. Like you wouldn't even stop about Eva. Always Eva. Every argument is Eva. Look in the mirror, Ashley."
I don't know how to feel about that text message. I think that is a surefire sign you are in the wrong relationship.
And with the gun incident, according to the text messages, Doug grabbed a gun and shot it through the kitchen ceiling because Ashley wouldn't, quote, shut the F up.
That's right. That's his reason why he did it, because she wouldn't shut up. So he had to, startle her to get her attention.
Right. In another text message, he stated, quote, I just lost it. I found my breaking point. Ashley, I was stupid. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was lost. I needed help. I got help. How many times do you want me to say I failed? That all shows that a man who has never done that before was under too much pressure. That's what happens. You break. I broke. I lost it. I know it. I got help.
And we are inserting the pictures of these texts in case you want to read along or you want to see how they were formatted and sent. To me, I see two broken people here. I don't think Doug was healed over what happened with his former spouse. I think he was struggling with grief and unresolved anger of some kind. And then Ashley added all that by not getting along with Eva. I mean, we can never know every part of someone else's relationship. But despite the relationship becoming strained, and that is an understatement, Ashley wanted a child of her own. Remember, she wanted a family. She wanted a big family. But there was a problem. Doug had gotten a vasectomy years before this, but she begged him to please get it reversed. And shockingly, he agreed because he wanted to make her happy. And I have to say, a baby is not going to fix issues in a relationship. It's only going to add to the stress. And just several days after the incident where Doug put a bullet into the ceiling, he and Ashley hosted a formal wedding reception for themselves. The reception took place in a downtown Charleston hotel, and Ashley looked stunning in her beaded white gown and train. Her hair was worn loose around her shoulders, and Doug, too, was handsome as they appeared happy together in photos. But we know that pictures do not tell a story about what's really going on in someone's life. Because, like I mentioned, this incident with the bullet happened just a few days before this, but yet here they are with their friends having this marvelous night, and no one is the wiser because nobody knows what's going on. Just kind of the premise of this whole story.
In addition to having a baby, there was also another big plan the couple was working on. According to Ashley, when she first met Doug, Doug learned that she was a ballet dancer, and he went crazy because of his love for classical ballet. However, those who knew Doug really well said Doug never showed an interest in ballet and didn't even know how to spell the word pirouette, and did so with a W.
He did not have an interest in ballet before Ashley.
And one night, after seeing a ballet after they married, Ashley and Doug drove home and discussed how to improve the industry. Since Ashley's job at the White House during Donald Trump's presidency never materialized, she shifted her focus to creating her own ballet company that she envisioned would revolutionize the industry. Doug was fully committed to helping Ashley turn her dream into a reality.
Right. Remember, she thought because she was taller, she missed opportunities. And that's a great dream to have.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. I don't think that this was some unheard of thing that she wanted to create. But despite this rocky beginning, Ashley and Doug decided to go into business together. And my brain is just like, no. Already they have a toxic relationship. And it won't get better with a business venture, I can tell you that. It's very stressful, and only certain people can work well together when you're talking about working with family, friends, or partners.
Love can be blind at times, and perhaps they believed this venture would bring them closer together.
It could.
In 2017, Ashley and Doug founded the American National Ballet Company with a mission to promote diversity in the ballet world. Their vision was to create a company that celebrated dancers of all body types, ethnicities, and backgrounds, challenging the traditional norms that favored a narrow and specific aesthetic. Doug was deeply invested in this project, liquidating assets and selling his interest in various patents to help fund the endeavor. He also persuaded friends, including a local attorney, to invest several $1 million into the company.
I can't even imagine asking somebody for $1 million or millions of dollars.
The American National Ballet was planned as a national touring company, and the ballet community was buzzing with excitement about the ambitious project.
To prepare for the 2017-2018 ballet season, they held auditions in Charleston, South Carolina, where Ashley and Doug were living at the time. And these auditions were both in person and through video submissions. In addition to Sarah, Ashley and Doug also recruited ballet dancer Hannah Manka. Unlike Sarah, Hannah stood at a mere 5 foot, making her one of the shortest dancers in the company. And then there was Charles McDaniel, who was the only Black dancer at his Los Angeles ballet school. He was excited to join A&B after Ashley and Doug offered him a position. Emma Hemsley was another talented ballet dancer, and she shared a similar sentiment regarding diversity in ballet. As a Black female dancer, Emma expressed her belief that the A&B represented a significant change in the industry, offering a place where her skills would be valued and appreciated regardless of ethnicity. At the management's request, each person hired for the American National Ballet Company had to post a selfie on Instagram with the hashtag #WeEmbraceDiversity or A&B Family. And by the end of the summer of 2017, nearly 40 dancers from across the nation had begun to arrive in Charleston, South Carolina. They were eagerly looking forward to joining A&B and embarking on a new journey with the company. It sounds promising, right?
Right. The dancers were offered 8-month contracts, health insurance, and visas for those non-U.S. residents, making the opportunity highly attractive. A&B employees also encouraged the dancers to sign a year-long lease at the luxury condominium complex in Charleston, which boasted a range of amenities. The management highlighted the convenience of the complex being just a 2-minute walk from the ballet studio.
I really wonder what would have happened if the next thing didn't, because it sounds so promising. They had the funding. It seemed like it could have worked out.
Yeah.
But then it also kind of reminds me of like the too good to be true kind of thing. Like, what was that one thing? Like Firefest? What was that thing?
Sure, that's a debacle.
Yeah. Like it's not, if it's too good to be true, like, oh, you get this luxury apartment building and it's 2-minute walk away and we'll give you a visa and insurance. It's almost like, wow.
Right.
But it was around the same time as the dancers began to arrive that Ashley discovered exciting news. She was pregnant. And this, of course, was a dream come true for Ashley. She was overcome with joy at this news. However, her happiness was actually downplayed by her severe morning sickness. You know, this really does happen to women, and it's not just the normal morning sickness. There were days when Ashley couldn't even stand up. She couldn't even take a shower, and that's really tough. I did have a friend that had the chronic morning sickness. I can't pronounce it. What is it?
Hyperemesis gravidarum.
And I don't know if Ashley was ever actually diagnosed with it. And please don't think that I'm trying to downplay her being sick. But let's just say there were other things going on that makes it a little suspicious. So just keep that in mind as you keep listening, because her complaints overlapped with the ballet company having issues.
The ballet company encountered major issues, including internal conflicts and financial struggles. Reports of mismanagement and dissatisfaction among the dancers began to surface, undermining the company's stability. Adding to the turmoil, Ashley wasn't even present for the company's launch on September 18th, raising further concerns about the project's direction.
Exactly. And that is because by August of that year, Ashley had packed herself up and her pets, and she moved back to Florida to live with her mother. She told Doug the move would be temporary so that her mom could take care of her while Doug was remaining in Charleston to continue working with the American National Ballet. And to me, it seemed like Ashley wanted a lot of things. She wanted a man. She wanted a man to take care of her. She wanted money, stability, a baby, her own company. But then she wanted Doug to deal with it all. And that's a lot of pressure.
So instead of attending the company launch, Ashley traveled to Charleston from Florida that day for an entirely different purpose. Upon arriving in Charleston, she quietly made her way to the home she shared with her husband, Doug. While she had every right to enter this house, her intentions were far from a joyful reunion.
Right. She's been living with her mother. And then on the same night that Doug is probably really busy with this grand opening, this unveiling of their company, she's sneaking, but like I would call it sneaking if you didn't know, into their home. And instead, she arrived to pack up more of her belongings and leave him with a devastating note. Ashley made it clear that her marriage to Doug was over, effective immediately. She expressed her deep concern for the safety of herself and now their unborn child. The note was scathing. It had a list of 21 bullet-pointed complaints against Doug, and it started out with, quote, "I can honestly tell you that I'm completely heartbroken. Over the past year, we've had good times, yes, but you've also displayed scary and irrational behavior with sudden bursts of rage and fits of anger, extremely uncontrollable anger. This has left me constantly stressed to the point of nausea and scared for my safety," end quote.
Ashley shared that she often felt on edge, as though she were dealing with two different versions of Doug. She said he would yell, scream, and curse at her, even going so far as to suggest that they should get a divorce. Doug would tell her he didn't want to see her or touch her ever again, leaving her deeply feeling unloved and uncertain about their relationship.
The note went on to mention how Doug had a habit of driving recklessly and that he even hit trees and violated traffic laws, even mentioning Eva and her friend that lived with them and how Doug used to scream at both of them. Ashley wrote, quote, "I now understand why Eva used to tell me she was afraid of you. You are possessive and manipulating," end quote.
Ashley said that their South Carolina home was falling apart and claimed that Doug wasn't paying their bills, putting the house at a risk of foreclosure. Towards the end of her note, she expressed her frustration and heartbreak, and she wrote, "All these things and more I've overlooked and lived with for now a year because I love you."
It's quite interesting, but all of this is like her putting all of his flaws in writing. I mean, maybe he couldn't pay the bills because he was funding her dream lifestyle, her dream ballet company. And what was she doing? She even talked about how being pregnant made her come to her senses. She wrote, quote, "Ever since finding out I was pregnant, you continue to display psychotic, irrational, and unsafe behavior that has left me fearful for my life and my safety, as well as that of my own child. I've come to get what belongs to me. Do not harass or try to follow me, or I will call the police and have a restraining order against you," end quote. It became clear that Ashley actually never intended to return to Charleston or to be with Doug again. She allowed Doug to believe that this move back with her mother was temporary, and she made everyone else believe she was walking out on her dream of owning a ballet company because she was so scared of Doug. But Ashley had her own plans from the beginning. She was determined to get the things that she wanted from Doug and then be free of him. That will become clear. But for now, when Doug discovered the letter left by Ashley, his daughter Eva was right by his side. Eva saw the heartbreak and the confusion written all over his face as he realized the gravity of this situation.
Doug read Ashley's letter and was immediately overcome with regret for his past actions. The weight of his mistakes hit him hard, and in an effort to make amends, he sent Ashley a heartfelt text message apologizing and promising the change. However, Ashley ignored his messages, appearing unmoved by his attempts to make things right. In a desperate bid to make things right, Doug told Ashley he was taking steps to address his behavior. He mentioned plans to lock up his guns and seek therapy. However, Ashley continued to ignore his messages. With Ashley gone, Doug was left solely in charge of running the American National Ballet, and it didn't take long for him to realize he couldn't manage the immense responsibility on his own. In response to that, he brought in new leadership who implemented significant changes to the company in an effort to stabilize it. However, things quickly began to unravel. On the first payday, management scrambled to come up with money to pay the dancers. In the end, Doug went to the bank and handed out cash stuffed in envelopes, a move that did little to reassure the dancers about the company's stability. Facing mounting financial pressure, Doug was forced to borrow tens of thousands of dollars just to cover the first payroll, leaving him in an increasingly precarious position. But ultimately, these changes proved insurmountable, and the American National Ballet closed its doors in late 2017, the same year it was founded.
I mean, first of all, this is a person who had no personal experience with ballet. And that's why I said, I wonder what would have happened if Ashley would have stayed involved. She knew a lot. You know, she had so much experience, but that's not how things went. Actually, at the time of the closure, Ashley released a statement saying, quote, "I want to start by saying that I publicly disavow my support for American National Ballet and its leadership. I have been on a personal leave and out of the state since the end of August and heard secondhand about the devastation on October 23rd. As the founder, I'm completely devastated by what has been done and how it was done. The new leadership has destroyed everything we worked so hard to build, and I cannot stand behind them or their actions. A&B was created to be different from any other company and was supposed to set a new standard in how it treated its dancers. Everyone involved should be ashamed of themselves for the way this was handled." End quote.
Ashley referenced the October 23rd incident, during which dancers were left stranded at an event with no transportation or accommodations to get back home.
That was a mess, and Ashley expressed strong dissatisfaction for the situation, stating that, quote, "they had destroyed everything that she worked so hard to build," and added that she no longer had anything to do with that company or anyone involved. With the American National Ballet facing difficult times, Doug found himself in a difficult financial situation. He had debts over $100,000 at this point, and he was struggling to rebuild his life and regain Ashley's trust. However, his troubles only intensified when the police showed up at his doorstep to question his daughter, Eva. Ashley had actually informed the authorities about Doug's alleged anger issues, and she expressed concern for her stepdaughter's well-being.
Wow.
Was this genuine or was it a power move? You decide after hearing the whole story.
During an interview with Child Protective Services, Eva firmly defended her father, insisting that he had always been loving and caring towards her. Following a thorough investigation, Doug was ultimately cleared of any suspicion. However, Ashley's absence from Doug's life continued to take an emotional toll on him. Despite his repeated efforts to reconcile, their relationship remained deeply strained.
And Ashley continued to experience discomfort that she attributed to pregnancy morning sickness. However, she confided in her close friends that she believed there was actually more to it. She claimed that as a dancer, she possessed a keen intuition about her body, and she believed that there was something more going on beyond the regular pregnancy symptoms. How would she know if she's never been pregnant before? Just saying. The pain she said she felt in her stomach and chest felt sharp and unbearable. She said it was as though her body was on the verge of exploding. And despite visiting various doctors who prescribed her medication to alleviate her discomfort, nothing seemed to work. And that is when her mind went to poisoning. But by this time, she hadn't even been living with Doug. However, she believed he had been systematically poisoning her over the months that they were together. She became convinced that he'd been using cups of tea given to her nightly to administer the toxins secretly. Oblivious to Ashley's suspicions, Doug sent her a birthday gift during this time. And guess what it was?
It was a teapot and teacups.
Exactly, because she loved tea. And he sent her some maternity tea. You know, the kind for your tummy. To Ashley, this gift only further confirmed her suspicions that Doug was using tea as a means for poisoning her. Ashley took Doug's gift to the police department for them to examine it. And it was determined that there were no poisonous materials inside. While this was reassuring, Ashley still harbored concerns that her health issues were from Doug. So what did she do?
Well, she decided to send a lock of her own hair to Carlson Company, a private forensic lab, for analysis.
And if you have never heard of this company, they are known for their involvement in very controversial cases, and it previously made headlines when Brittany Murphy's father sent a piece of her hair to them, leading to a conclusion that Brittany Murphy had been a victim of heavy metal poisoning. However, reporting on this matter has been widely refuted and dismissed as speculative. But despite the doubts surrounding other cases, Ashley remained convinced that Doug was behind poisoning her. So she too sent in her hair to be tested. The reason you would send your hair is because maybe you would go to the doctor, you would be tested, your blood was tested, and the toxins weren't in your system at that time. But when you test hair, it can test for toxins that have been around longer. And remember, she hadn't been living with Doug. Whether or not she really believed she was being poisoned, we cannot know for sure. Because she could have gotten it in her head. And once it's in there, if you're the type of person, you can kind of come up with so many different things, so many different reasons. But in the grand scheme of things, when you put everything together, it looked like she was trying to come up with as many different reasons why Doug was dangerous. Now, I'm not saying that Doug wasn't dangerous. You've heard some of the things that he's done in the past. I think both of these individuals have their own flaws, like in many of these situations that we've talked about on this channel. But some of what Ashley starts to do was next level, especially what happens at the end.
And it's impossible to know for sure whether Ashley truly believed she was being harmed, but the test results added a troubling layer to the situation. Her hair tested positive for dangerously high levels of aluminum, cobalt, zinc, tin, and barium. The Carlson Company's explanation was even more alarming. They concluded that Ashley had been deliberately exposed to these toxins, identifying the perpetrator simply as the poisoner.
Wow. How would they know that she was deliberately exposed?
You're right. Those chemicals are heavy metals, and exposure to them can lead to heavy metal poisoning. This condition can result from various sources, such as industrial exposure, air or water pollution, certain foods, medications, improperly coated food containers, or even ingesting lead-based paints.
That's interesting. I've never really looked into that before, but obviously I've heard of heavy metal poisoning. It's like something that we've all kind of heard about. And Doug's attorney refuted this report, stating there was no evidence to support these claims. About the fate of Doug's first wife, Renee, though, she believed that Doug poisoned her too, but she had no evidence to prove that. 3 weeks before she was due to have her and Doug's daughter, Ashley then made a surprising decision. She checked herself into Tampa General Hospital in March of 2018, informing the doctors that her baby had been exposed to heavy metals. She alleged that her husband, Doug, had poisoned her. The staff at Tampa General Hospital was unable to verify the authenticity of these claims, but they had to do their part. And they decided to err on the side of caution, which they should do. And they assigned the name Christina to Ashley as an alias. And this decision was taken to ensure the safety of everyone involved, which after I know all that I know, seems to be over the top. She's like a black widow spider weaving its web. In addition to alleging poisoning, Ashley also made some startling claims about Doug's previous relationship with his now deceased wife, Renee, Eva's mother. She claimed that Doug had killed her. How? Poisoning, of course.
So where did she come up with this?
Apparently, she went through an old phone of Doug's, and she had found some text messages. This is when they were together, and they were between Doug and Renee. And she confronted Doug about one of them, which was quite disturbing. It really was. His late wife wrote, quote, "I was deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you through finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicked me so hard on New Year's Eve because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You held a gun to your head twice in my home." End quote. Now Ashley had proof that there was a pattern with Doug, and she couldn't have been the cause of his outburst like he had claimed.
Well, it definitely is a pattern.
It is. I mean, we are not going to deny things that we see that are facts. But these incidents of physical mistreatment are not in dispute. According to police reports, there was a documented pattern of violence in Doug's first marriage. In those police reports, Renee too claimed that Doug punched holes in the wall of their South Carolina home. And in text messages found by Ashley, Renee Benefield complained that Doug was controlling, manipulative, and violent. According to Ashley, 13 days after Renee asked Doug for a divorce, she was found dead in their home from an unexpected cardiac event. The coroner determined that Renee had an undiagnosed heart condition, which we told you about, and had a 75% blockage of her main artery. In the days that followed, Doug told investigators that he was, quote, "at peace," end quote, with Renee's sudden and unexpected passing. But I have to make note that the allegations surrounding the death of Renee Benefield are all unsubstantiated speculation. The police never suspected Doug of wrongdoing in his wife's death. In fact, the medical examiner stated that Renee Benefield's death was due to natural causes. There was never even the suspicion that he had anything to do with her death. But it was enough to make Ashley leave South Carolina and move back home to Florida, 3 states away, according to her.
Right, and Doug wasn't ready to let go of Ashley yet, or their unborn baby. According to his best friend and cousin, Tommy Benefield, Doug was irrationally obsessed with Ashley. Tommy described Doug as starstruck by her youth and beauty. After Ashley left him, Doug struggled to accept his loss of his young wife. He began to see himself as a graying image of a man who had lost everything, except this obsession with Ashley. Despite their separation, Doug clung to the fantasies of a happily ever after and refused to take no for an answer. The fact that they were going to have a baby together gave him hope. Doug couldn't bear not knowing what Ashley was doing in Florida. In his mind, she was still his wife. Crossing 3 state lines, Doug followed Ashley with relentless determination. He even placed a tracker on her car, meticulously recording her every move in the Notes app on his phone. Each entry revealed the obsessive depth of his fixation. Doug's paranoia and controlling nature drove him to follow Ashley even to her attorney's office in an attempt to ensure that she wasn't cheating on him.
And this is exactly why, when Ashley was admitted to the hospital in Florida, she alleged that Doug had been stalking her. And the staff at Tampa General Hospital remained vigilant and took her concerns seriously and admitted her under that false name. But before all that, Doug himself had turned to the legal system. He hired an attorney and had sent a letter to Ashley asking to be notified of their child's birth and to be allowed to be in the delivery room. Well, after that note, that's when Ashley made the move to admit herself into the hospital requesting an induction. Doug's attorney believed that this was malicious and it was an intentional way to deprive Doug of the opportunity to bond with his new daughter. And that's actually very cruel. Regardless of their relationship issues, Doug was still the baby's father, and they were legally married at the time. However, I don't want to discount the fact that he was, like we had just explained, stalking. I mean, it got to that point. You're putting a tracker, you're making notes about where a person is. So it's really hard in this case, and that's why I kept going back and forth. Anyone who's had an induction for birth knows that scheduling induction with your doctor takes longer than 24 hours. So I don't think she was induced because she was trying to get away from Doug and like wanting to have the baby right away. I really don't think so. But just 3 days after Ashley checked herself into the hospital, she had a baby girl via C-section March 19th of 2018. However, she did not inform Doug about the birth of their baby, and Ashley chose not to include Doug's name on the birth certificate or even give the last name to their newborn daughter. And to add insult to injury, she named their daughter Emerson, which was an entirely different name than the one they agreed upon. And I can't even imagine finding out that way. Like I'm being served with a paper and I'm like, oh my gosh, not only is my child born, but what's this name like that I've never heard of before?
This sparked a heated custody battle, and we're going to play a clip from one of the injunction and custody battle hearings. But not just any hearing. In this particular motion, Ashley had taken the drastic step of filing to terminate Doug's parental rights before he even had the opportunity to meet his baby.
Now, this is a longer clip, but it's only a portion of the judge's statements in this custody hearing between Doug and Ashley. And we should note that Ashley had tried to have the judge removed before this hearing for bias. I just want to point that out. Ashley was continually on the losing end of her filings, and she blamed the judge, not the law, but the judge. And then the judge refused to recuse herself from this case. And this request was probably not something that Ashley really appreciated. And it didn't endear Ashley to the judge, of course. You know, you don't want the judge there. You file for removal. The judge is still there. And what's clear from this following clip is that the judge wasn't buying Ashley's portrayal of herself as a victim during the marriage or her time in Florida. So let's listen.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Ms. Benefield has ever been poisoned or suffered from any illness of any poison. Court finds that Dr. Hilliard's testimony was suspect. I don't think that the court finds that he reviewed one record appropriately. And in comparison to Dr. Sawyer, I think his testimony, in a word, was bunk. which I think even in cross-examination, there was a misunderstanding that there is a range that these metals are in the human body, not just a single number. About January 2017 through, I'm going to say 5/8/2017, there appears to be a marriage in which there are arguments, but there is still a very committed relationship to the point where they're talking about having a reversal of vasectomy to have a child. That on 5/8/2017, the clear evidence is that there is the vasectomy alteration or reversal. And that from that point, they begin to pursue having a child. The court will find there is one incident of alleged domestic violence, and I got to tell you, it is de minimis, even though it's huge. How it was executed, the shot into the ceiling, court is going to find that at no time was the shot by Mr. Benefield at or in the direction of Miss Benefield. The court has seen Mr. Benefield testify, and the court finds that Mr. Benefield is taking on responsibility for that single misstep. But that is a remote type of domestic violence that has occurred. Subsequent to that, it is clear that Miss Benefield continued to pursue a relationship and to have child with this gentleman, that she had a lavish wedding, invited numerous people there, had many people that she could have confided in, saying, I'm in a hellish situation, things are out of control. Just last week, he shot a bullet in the ceiling. That's absolutely not what happens. Instead, she goes through with this lavish wedding. She goes on developing a ballet with her husband at that time, posing in magazines, portraying to everybody in the world that this is a very happy marriage, that we're going to start this national ballet at a significant cost, both emotionally, physically, and financially to the parties. They finally find out that in July 2017, they have conceived a child, and that, or they think that that's the date they've conceded in retroactive review, which tells this court that during that period after the shot, that they were still engaging in a intimate relationship. The court does not find credible any type of animal cruelty in this particular case, nor does the court find that the other incidences alleged of punching the wall were ever directed completely at her, nor were they meant for intimidation. During all this period of time, what we have is a household that is continuing on. Ms. Benefield being in the home, not making anyone alert. The medical records are devoid of any conversations between her and people that would have been providing protection, those being doctors, etc., indicating in the least that she has any type of poisoning that is appearing in her system, that she has been the victim of domestic violence, and or that this child, Eva, has been the victim of domestic violence.
I do see the judge's point. If she was truly afraid of Doug, then why get married? Why start a business? And why decide to plan to have a child together? Something they had to plan, because Doug had to have a procedure to reverse his vasectomy.
Exactly, and the judge stated that she had considered other evidence regarding Doug's conduct and Ashley's claims of fear. This included the fact that Doug had traveled to Florida during a storm to ensure that Ashley, her mother, and their daughter had a working generator, demonstrating concern for their safety. Additionally, the judge noted that Ashley felt comfortable enough after the storm to travel to South Carolina with Doug to retrieve her personal belongings and bringing them back to Florida. The judge concluded that if Ashley truly feared harm from Doug, she wouldn't have willingly driven up and back with him.
But I have to interject something here, and it goes back to what I was just saying, that these cases are very hard. They're complicated because despite what the judge found in this custody hearing, DV experts often point out that victims can exhibit behaviors that might seem counterintuitive to outsiders, but they could be deeply rooted in this complex dynamic and these trauma bonding relationships. And because of fear, they try to, what do you call it? Just like go with the flow, I guess.
Yeah, mitigate damage.
So yeah, there are cases where women stay, have children, and other things, hoping that their abuser will change. And these same DV experts would say that the behaviors that Doug Benefield exhibited were strong indicators of a violent and toxic relationship. The fact that Ashley might have traveled with him or been alone with him after accusing him of violence doesn't really negate the reality of the trauma that she may have experienced.
Right.
What it does show is how complicated and coercive that these types of relationships can be, where victims do feel like they have little choice but to go along to get along. Ashley was now facing the reality that she would have to co-parent with a man that she allegedly feared. And I also need to point out, we don't have access to any of the psychological reports that the judge was talking about Ashley or Doug, which the judge strongly considered before making her ruling. What we do know from the judge's ruling is that she did not find Ashley credible. In fact, she found Ashley deceitful and manipulating. In her very long ruling, she made it clear that Ashley had zero credibility with the court, and in the court records, she was labeled as an unreliable narrator, which is a nice way to say that you are a liar.
The court also finds there are some issues with the credibility of Miss Benefield when she's actively sitting here telling this court she doesn't like to have publicity, but at the same token, she's participating in articles concerning the alleged poison, etc. As far as the last comment on the poisoning, there is not one piece of evidence, like I said, that has been established that even if she was being poisoned, that there has been a suggestion of a nexus of the who, how, and where the poison. That would be rank speculation for this court to jump into the idea that because it happened, it had to be him, especially when I have, in all senses, not a credible witness is the only person that's asking me to speculate.
Judge Moreland also ruled that not only would Doug be given parenting time, but he would also be given full legal authority over Emerson's medical decisions to prevent Ashley from abusing the medical establishment to once again persecute and harass Doug with unfounded allegations. After the ruling, Doug and Ashley met outside the sheriff's office to exchange custody of their baby. Despite the animosity between them, the interaction was surprisingly pleasant. I mean, it was outside of a sheriff's station.
Exactly. It's like, I have to be on my best behavior.
Ashley even suggested that she, Doug, and their daughter spend time together as a family. This unexpected gesture caught Doug off guard, but he cautiously accepted the offer, eager for the chance to bond with his daughter. Doug's attorney, Stephanie Murphy, was present for the exchange, and she was also surprised. So let's hear her discuss that now.
I got into Doug's truck and we just waited because we were there early. And then he saw Ashley arrive with the baby. And so he pulled the truck closer and then we both got out of the car and started walking toward Ashley. And then it was just an odd kind of interaction, actually. She turned to me with this nasty look on her face and said to Doug,
I'll sustain as to the characterization.
She turned to Doug and said, "Are you dating her?" And so obviously we both said, well, of course not, no. And then I hung back and Doug then was standing there and Ashley approached him with Emerson and they started talking. Eventually she let him hold the baby and they just kept talking for a few minutes. Then I was advised that they were going to be leaving together, strangely, that Ashley was going to be going with them for the time sharing.
Was this a surprise to you?
Absolutely. We had just been in knockdown, drag out litigation for months with just horrendous allegations that were unfounded. And yet she said, I want to go with you. And he said, okay.
I mean, obviously, they're in front of a sheriff's station and there's somebody else watching.
It is interesting that she turned to the attorney, well, you were saying they were standing there, and asked if Doug was dating her.
What?
Yeah, she said, are you dating her? Because the attorney was sitting there wanting to make sure everything was okay. And I was thinking, is she that insecure? And of course, it was shocking to Doug's attorney that after all the arguments and the fighting for custody, Ashley seemed to be okay just going with Doug. But Emerson was almost 6 months old at this time. Yeah, she's 6 months old. She's like Massey's age. And as parents know, and we just recently found this out ourselves, that's around the time when a baby can first develop a fear of being held by strangers. We don't know why Ashley asked to go with Doug and the baby, but this could have been why. Nobody knows for sure. She could have been like, oh, the baby might be scared. The baby might not want to be away from me. And that's all that the daughter knew was Ashley. But we know that Doug was still in love with Ashley and wanted to reunite his family. Despite his attorney's advice not to allow Ashley to go with them, Doug still allowed it. He was actually thrilled to be back in communication with Ashley, even if it was just for a few hours. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves and in the story, but this is where Doug's story and Ashley's story intertwine. Or rather, when the telling of Ashley's stories ends and Doug's story begins. It must be told through various witnesses and Doug's attorney, Stephanie Murphy. And that's because Doug can no longer tell his side of the story.
What we do know is that Doug was determined to be closer to his daughter, and Ashley appeared to be making an effort to reconcile. In pursuit of this, Doug left Charleston, South Carolina, and moved to Bradenton, Florida. He rented an apartment near where Ashley lived with her mother, hoping that being nearby would make it easier to maintain a healthy relationship with both Ashley and their daughter Emerson. Over the next few months, Doug and Ashley began spending more and more time together. They even attended marriage counseling, with Doug fully committed to making their relationship work.
But as I said, Ashley had other plans, and they didn't include Doug. In August of 2019, Doug was shocked to see Ashley wearing what looked like an engagement ring. And this hit him hard, and he immediately hired a private investigator to uncover the truth. The investigator informed Doug that Ashley was seeing someone else, and this shattered all of his hope that their marriage had been saved. Doug's world came crashing down, leaving him feeling betrayed and disillusioned. Despite the struggles they faced, Doug had hoped that Ashley's change in behavior was genuine. However, this revelation that she was actually seeing someone else shattered his remaining trust in their relationship. So that November of 2019, Doug actually filed for divorce from Ashley. Because all this time, Ashley hadn't filed for divorce. She left, she didn't tell him about the baby, but it was actually him that decided enough is enough. She's with another man? That's insulting. Ashley made accusations against Doug once again. And this time, she was alleging that he had, wait for it, inappropriately touched their daughter. Yep. And by the way, this is what that judge was trying to avoid by giving Doug equal power in Emerson's medical treatment, because she had a feeling that these allegations were going to get worse, and they did.
In response to these allegations, investigators were promptly called to conduct a thorough inquiry. After completing their investigation, they concluded that there was insufficient evidence to suggest that Doug had harmed his little girl in any way.
Somehow he still thought there was hope. And a lot of that had to do with Ashley's back and forth actions. Because something like this would happen, and then all of a sudden, she would try to reconcile with him again. So it's like she would accuse him of these really disgusting, insufficient evidence, things that were not happening in the eye of the court and the law. But then she was like, oh, do you want to hang out and get back together? In a surprising turn of events in May of 2020, Ashley and Doug began speaking again, and they even started to go out on dates. It seemed like they had moved on from their past conflicts and were working on rebuilding their relationship, but for real this time. One evening, Ashley suggested to Doug that they, meaning as a family, moved to Maryland together because Ashley's mom had inherited a home. It was her childhood home. And she convinced Doug that moving would provide them a fresh start and a new environment, and that this would overcome all the challenges they faced in the past. Well, Doug seemed hesitant because, he had heard this before. He had moved from South Carolina to Florida, and now she wanted him to move to Maryland. Even though when he did move to Florida, they were living in separate places in separate homes, but he agreed to consider it, hoping that a new place where they would be living separately, by the way, so they would be moving together, but they would not be living together according to what Ashley said. They would be able to be a family again and mend their marriage, and then ultimately, maybe they could live together.
So Doug was preparing to make the move to Maryland, and on September 27th, 2020, he and Ashley were busy packing all their belongings and her mother's into one large U-Haul moving truck. However, even this process sparked disagreement. Ashley insisted that her things should be packed last so they'd be closer to the door and easier to unload since her belongings were to be dropped off first. Doug, however, disagreed, and here's where things start to get contradictory. While Ashley and her mother claimed that she and Doug were not going to be living together in Maryland, this was at odds with other indications of their plans.
Yeah, It made no sense because there was a custody hearing coming up. Actually, it was set for the end of September, I think the 30th to be exact. So to Doug's family, it made no sense for all of them to be moving to Maryland if there was a custody hearing just 3 days in Florida. It's kind of weird. Doug's side said that they planned to dismiss that hearing because he believed he and Ashley were getting back together again, and Doug was thrilled.
Even though the upcoming custody hearing was scheduled over Zoom, meaning neither Doug nor Ashley needed to physically be in Florida to attend, it raised questions about their actions. Doug was actively helping pack a U-Haul with all of Ashley's and her mother's belongings, which suggests a deeper motivation. Doug was also relocating to Maryland, adding to the speculation, considering there was a contentious custody hearing just 3 days later in Florida. It's puzzling that both were leaving the state, and the most logical explanation would be that Doug believed they were reconciling.
Yeah, if this sounds confusing, what it is it looks like Ashley's telling Doug one thing, okay, but Ashley's telling other people another thing. Exactly. And we can never know because you'll find out what happens here. We're hearing all of this from Ashley, from other evidence. This could be something totally different. What we know is there was a pod on the location, you know, one of those things where you kind of fill it up as you go along. And Doug had actually gotten a job in Maryland. It was like his dream job. So he was excited to move. But why would you do all that unless you really truly thought that you were getting back together?
I mean, another reason is to stay closer to his daughter.
Right. And that could have been it. I mean, if he had the flexibility to live anywhere, which it seemed like he did, considering he's been moving a couple times. But in reality, Ashley wanted him to think they were going to be together again.
Totally.
And when Doug arrived that day, Ashley's mother was taking Emerson to the splash pad up the street at the park to enjoy some water activities while Ashley and Doug would be packing the U-Haul, which means Ashley and Doug would be alone together in the house. Next thing they knew, a 911 call came in from Ashley's neighbor, Jon Sant. He was familiar with Ashley's situation and apparently had even caught Doug standing in his backyard one night, allegedly stalking Ashley to see if she had anyone over there and was cheating on him. Interestingly, Jon Sant had also taken Ashley to the shooting range to practice shooting. Other neighbors saw Ashley running out of her house that evening and over to Jon's house, screaming and crying while still carrying a gun. It's Jon who called 911, so let's listen to that now.
Manatee County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Hi, my address is 11327 White Rock Terrace.
Okay, can you repeat that for me to make sure I have it correctly?
The house next door, honey, what's your address? Okay, it's right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him. Now, we've not gone over there yet.
Okay, what's his name?
Who?
What is his name?
His name is Doug Benefield.
Okay.
I have not gone over there. I'm not going to go back.
I don't want you to go over there. Stay on the line just one moment. I'm going to connect you over to the sheriff's dispatch, okay?
Okay.
One moment.
Calm down, honey. Calm down.
Yeah.
You want me to go over and look at anything or just wait for the police?
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay?
All right. If you could just get them here quick. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her and she shot him.
Okay. I'm just getting that all on the screen, okay?
Okay. I know, honey. Calm down. I know. Go ahead, ma'am.
Where is the gun? Is it with her or is it just...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor inside the door. My door's locked, so in case he isn't, he can't get up. I'm also armed if he does come over and try to harm her, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
I'm kind of concerned with her mother and the little girl might get back there and find this whatever happened. Don't go out there, honey. Come on. I know. Come on, honey. Sit down. Sit down. I know.
Yeah. All right, I just want you guys to stay on the phone with me, okay?
No, I'm right here with him. I'm just with her. I'm trying to comfort her. We're in the house. Or the police are going to want, no problem. I know, baby. You got to sit down. Come on. There's no... Well, honey, they want you to stay here. If he isn't, we can't take a chance. That's why I want them to hurry up before they get back in the park.
Deputies are moving as fast as their hand. They're coming priority. They're coming lights and sirens. They just want to get and make sure that everything's okay. I want to... So where in the house is he?
Where in the house is he? Her bedroom. No, I don't know where that is. So it's one of the bedrooms. It's a lot like mine, so I'm going to assume when you go into is the garage door open? When you go into the garage, it's going to be on the left.
And right away, the way Jon is speaking with her, it's like she's a child.
Well, she is significantly younger than this man. He's probably maybe in his 70s. I'm not sure. But I agree. The honey, the baby, the sweetie, it's a little much. But then again, he may not know the scope of what was going on. By the time the police arrived, Ashley had already called her attorney, who of course advised her not to say a word to officers. This is normal. And I think that more people should stay silent and get representation ASAP anytime something like this happens. Now, we have some interesting and I would say very important audio of Ashley's mother, who is now walking back to her home from the park, which is about a 5-minute walk, and she saw a cop car. Actually, there were cops looking for Emerson at the time because they didn't know that Ashley's mom was watching her. So all they knew is that there was a 2-year-old that lived in this home with Ashley, and she was nowhere to be found. So the cops were going around the neighborhood with an intercom, and they were saying, Emerson, looking for this little girl. And they see this woman walking with this little girl who matched the age, and an officer was yelling, Emerson. And this woman was like, yeah. And of course she's confused because here she is just walking home and you're calling out her granddaughter's name. So she was like, who are you? Very confusing situation. So you're going to be hearing audio from Ashley's mom, Alicia Byers, at the scene as Ashley is being taken away in a cop car. You will hear someone yell that we're praying for you, Ashley, as a patrol car drives away. You will also overhear a conversation between Ashley's attorney, Faith Brown, and the officer on the scene. The attorney was actually on Alicia's phone, and they were talking when Alicia handed the phone to the cop. So let's listen, and we will discuss afterward.
We're praying, Ashley. It's coming.
Yeah, what's that?
Her attorney's coming,
Okay,
so please wait.
You can meet us down at the sheriff's office. You can meet us down at the sheriff's office. Okay, I have to take her down there. Her attorney can meet us there. Take your hands off the car. All right? No, we're not. In order to make a self-defense claim, she's got to talk to us. Okay? You can't claim self-defense without saying anything.
After dealing with you after 3 years, how do you trust?
What attorney is so I can tell the people to wait for him, to be ready for him?
I don't know. Where is he?
Where is he?
Yes.
He is at the hospital.
Okay, what happened?
Blake.
Okay,
He's at Blake Hospital. If somebody would talk to us, then we would know.
I was at the
I know.
park.
I understand that, but nobody's talking to us, so we're trying to figure out. He's injured. He's on his way to the hospital. She knows what happened. She wants to go down to the office and tell us down there.
Okay.
So she's going down there. As soon as we know more, we'll tell you.
Okay.
But we don't know yet.
Can you hear that?
Is he stable?
We're waiting to hear from the hospital. We don't know yet. It was CPR on the way to the hospital, so we're trying to figure out exactly how he is right now. We have no update yet. He's with the doctor.
Okay. I will tell you, I am her family law attorney.
Okay.
And I'm on my way there.
Okay.
We were in the middle of implementing a safety plan to get her out safely.
Yes, ma'am.
Because she was in danger with the assistance of a psychologist.
Okay.
2 attorneys had a burner phone, a safe location set up, a rental car. I mean, it was down to the nitty-gritty, and it was going to take place tomorrow.
Okay.
He's been aggressive.
And I will just let you know that I was very concerned that he was getting wind of what was transpiring.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That'll help a lot, obviously, piecing together what exactly occurred.
Any news on his, I mean, was there anything visible as far?
I just got here. I can't tell you anything just yet. As soon as I know more, I'll come back over here and tell her to tell you. As soon as I know anything at all. My name is Detective Dickerman.
I don't know if you heard Alicia ask how Doug was doing in the very beginning of this interview. The officer said that Doug was taken away to the hospital. And then we heard from the attorney, who alluded to issues in the marriage, stating that she was trying to come up with an escape plan for Ashley, involving a burner phone, a support system, an apartment, a rental car, and that she had been scared for her. Then we heard Ashley's mother, Alicia. She's angry. She states that the cops had even laughed at them for reporting Doug's mistreatment in the past. But this cop on scene was like, well, I didn't personally laugh. And Alicia was like, okay, but you're a sheriff, insinuating that she has disdain for the entire department because, as she explained, she had been dealing with Doug's behavior for over 3.5 years. And according to her, no one had ever helped them.
As soon as I know anything, I will come back and let you guys know. You are, I know you're relative to both, but you're her mother?
I'm her mother and her grandmother.
And her grandmother.
Yes.
And any family for him here?
No.
Direct family? Okay. I didn't know if there was any local or...
Yeah, I would have no idea, no.
How to get hold of... Okay.
No. Which is terrifying.
That's not true at all.
Yes, they have laughed.
I have not laughed at anything.
You haven't. They
Okay,
have.
then don't tell me I found it
I had to call and he was stalking me. They have found
You said you guys.
You
So-
guys, yes. You are a sheriff.
Right. So,
I didn't say you in particular.
Right. I understand that. I'm not going to argue it with you.
No, I know.
So, all I know is...
Okay.
We need to investigate what happened
That's
today.
fine, yes.
Obviously, we need to find out about all that because
Okay.
that's going to do nothing
Okay.
but help her or
Okay.
the truth needs
I'm
to
sorry,
come out.
this is like blowing my mind.
That's fine. Take a minute. Take a breath. I'm not going to make you talk. But ultimately, we're going to need to know the history, whether she comes from her, comes from you, comes from other people. That's fine. But we need to find out exactly what occurred here today.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Okay.
She is not under arrest. She was put in there because there was an injured person.
Okay.
And
Okay,
she
I
was
get
the one
that.
they said that she's the one who did it. Put her in the car.
Okay.
Can you come down and tell us?
Okay.
Yes, we can come down.
Okay.
Come down and tell you.
Okay.
That's why she's on her way to our office.
Okay.
And we'll wait for her lawyer so that they can stay
Okay.
together.
Okay.
And as soon as we get any updates on him, like I told
Yeah.
her, there was CPR in progress.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is right now. As soon as I get an update from that, I will let you know. Okay?
All right.
I'll explain it. What we're doing right now is
Okay.
we have to get a search warrant for the
Yeah.
house. Okay? So that's what we're waiting on. We just get the search warrant. We'll take pictures. We'll collect some
Okay.
measurements or whatever, just so we can,
Okay.
you know, whatever story she did, we can prove it. You know, we can match this
Yeah.
up and say,
Yeah.
if you say he's doing this, so let's get some measurements and get some proof and some physical evidence that that's what's occurring.
Okay.
Yeah, they are pretty bright.
Blinded us over the, yeah.
Just to tell you, I just got an update
Yes.
from the hospital.
Yeah.
And we didn't make it.
Okay.
So Doug died. Let's just go with that for now.
Okay.
She's down there with us, explaining what happened. That
Okay.
doesn't change how we deal with anything, how we do anything. Okay, that
He's
doesn't.
been coming after us for 3.5 years. 3.5 years we have been begging for help and nobody has helped us. Nobody. All of this abuse that has happened at his hands and nobody has helped us. Nobody.
Have you been with
We have been living in fear for 3.5.
Has he been arrested for domestic before?
Oh, he
Or was he always on that line?
knows how to play the game.
Okay, that's what I mean. He was one of those guys that always just stayed on that
Yep.
gray area.
He yes.
So no arrests at all? That you know of?
I think, no. I'm going to say maybe way back.
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll pull that up.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not just asking what you know, not what you
Okay.
think may have happened. Just what you know.
Okay.
What violence have you seen with your own eyes? Let's start with recently. What have you seen recently?
You have to understand, this is a man who manipulates and manipulates. And he looks at you and he gets close to you and he will back you in the corner and he will dare you to not agree with him.
Okay. So is it more mentally violent?
It's
than physical?
emotional like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does he ever get physical? Or did he always just push you to that point?
Oh, he'd push to the
point?
point. He would, when they were up in South Carolina, he would lock her in the closet and lock her in the bathroom and force her back into bed because her attitude wasn't right. And
were those ever reported, or was she too scared, too afraid to do that?
For a long time she didn't, because he said he owns the police and nobody will ever believe it.
And I'm sure you didn't miss the part where the officer let Alicia know that Doug didn't make it. Her response? Okay. And the officer was like, Doug is dead. And again, she was like, okay. And proceeds to explain how they were living in fear. On one hand, I can believe this. I can believe that the relationship was toxic. And I can believe that the fact that Doug threw things, he shot guns, injured innocent pets, it's not a stretch that he was manipulating, that he and Ashley both brought out the worst in one another. But before I give you more of my thoughts about that, as I said, Doug was pronounced dead at exactly 8:09 p.m. And Ashley was taken to the station for an interview that same night and into the early morning hours with her attorney by her side.
An officer entered the room to explain that Ashley needed to sign a search warrant allowing them to search her home as well as collect evidence from her body, including photographs and DNA swabs. Ashley appeared somewhat aloof, possibly a mix of concerned, confused, and scared. Her attorney quickly informed the police that Ashley would not be making a statement at this time. So let's take a moment to listen as the officer outlines what they intend to do.
Okay. Ashley, I'm Detective Flonzinski with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit. I know that we haven't talked yet, and we're not going to be taking a statement from you. That's fine. I have a search warrant, okay? And your attorney's here. I'm going to give it a copy to both of you so you guys can read it, but I'm going to actually read it to you first. Do you understand? Okay. I need a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to answer verbally so that
Yeah, we are recording.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's fine. You're under a lot of stress, and I totally understand that. This is one of the most trying times probably in your life. So if you have questions, ask. If you want to talk to your attorney privately, just tell me. I'll be more than happy to leave the room. I'll turn the recording off. You can say whatever you want to say. But no one can stop this process, just so you know, because it is a search warrant. All right? You can't refuse it. If you do refuse it, there's actually a charge for that. It's called obstruction to a search warrant. But everything is going to be laid out. There's going to be no reason for you to refuse anything. If you have any questions, please just ask, okay? Because I'm more than happy to share and to talk about anything that I can. All right? Circuit Court of 12th Circuit, of 12th Judicial Circuit in Manatee County, Florida. Search warrant. In the name of the state of Florida, to all singular the sheriffs of the state of Florida and their deputies, commissioners of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and his designees, municipal police officers acting within their jurisdiction, and state attorney investigators. Whereas I have received an affidavit and application for a search warrant on this date by the affiant, Detective Garrett Michael Ponzinski of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, and whereas I have examined the facts set forth in support of said application for a search warrant, and whereas the facts have caused me to certify and find that there is probable cause to believe that the laws of the state of Florida relative to Florida State Statute 78204 sub 2, murder, have been violated, and the instrumentalities of said crime or evidence relevant to proving said felony may be found within the human body described in the application, and said application is incorporated herein by reference. Therefore, these presents are to command you with the proper and necessary assistance in daytime or nighttime, on Sundays or on holidays, as the exigencies of the occasion may require, and use any force necessary to diligently search a human being identified as the suspect, and by the following: name, Ashley Christina Benefield.
Authorities found probable cause to suggest a murder had occurred, with Ashley as the primary suspect. When first responders entered the home, they found Doug on the floor of Ashley's bedroom. He was moved to the living room, where aid was rendered, and it was noted that he had gunshot wounds to his right leg, right arm, and right chest. Doug was transported to the nearest hospital, where he ultimately succumbed to his injuries, and he was pronounced dead. A preliminary search of the scene uncovered 4 .45 caliber casings on the floor of Ashley's bedroom, along with a bullet on the floor and 2 more embedded in the walls. However, inconsistencies began to emerge. Ashley had no visible injuries, no ripped or stretched clothing, no cuts, bruises, or any signs of a struggle that might suggest self-defense. This discrepancy prompted investigators to seek further evidence rather than immediately accept the scenario of an attack in which Ashley acted to protect herself. They wanted to conduct a more thorough search of the house and collect DNA swabs and photographs to clarify what had transpired. Ashley, now at the sheriff's office, was being asked to sign the search warrant to proceed.
The officer is going to explain why they have to take DNA swabs from her body and why that was important.
On the basis of the foregoing facts, affiant believes the following evidence may be obtained from Ashley Benefield and would be necessary in this investigation. 1, buccal swabs containing human DNA. Now, that's going to be swabs taken from your mouth, okay? 2, any and all clothing currently being worn by Ashley Benefield to include socks, shoes, shorts, shirt, and bra. 3, any and all jewelry currently being worn by Ashley Benefield. 4, swabs from Ashley Benefield's extremities to include her hands, arms, wrists, and neck to be tested for trace or transferred DNA that may indicate a struggle took place prior to the victim's death. 5, full body photos of Ashley Benefield.
As we've heard, the photographs and DNA collection are critical to determine whether a struggle occurred before Doug was shot. For example, if Ashley's jewelry was broken, if Doug's DNA was found on her neck, suggesting strangulation, or if his DNA was on her wrist, indicating restraint, it could support the argument that an attack took place. Such evidence would lend credibility to Ashley's claim of self-defense. But after conducting a thorough search of the house and reviewing photographs of Ashley, the sheriff's office concluded that she had no injuries aside from a minor scratch on her right side, which appeared to be old and superficial. Further investigation revealed that a witness explained that Ashley got that scratch from moving boxes the day before. Meanwhile, Doug was found to have been shot twice. 1 bullet entered the outside of his right leg and exited the inside of his leg, while the other grazed his right bicep and entered his chest cavity from the right side. This evidence raised questions about the circumstances of the shooting and Ashley's claim of self-defense. There were no signs of stippling on Doug or his clothing, suggesting that the firearm was fired from several feet away. Additionally, based on this entry wound, it did not appear that Doug was facing Ashley when she began shooting. The evidence also indicated that Doug had not taken a defensive or combative stance, nor was he moving towards Ashley or engaged in a struggle. It appeared Doug had been shot and fell to the ground, possibly striking his head on the wall as he went down. An abrasion on the back of his head matched the size and position of a small patch of disturbed drywall on the bedroom wall. Doug was found to have no weapons on him or anywhere near him at the time of the incidents. To ensure nothing was missed, investigators obtained a second search warrant for additional photographs to document any potential injuries on Ashley that might have not been immediately visible. Since bruises or contusions can take time to develop, they conducted a second set of photographs of Ashley on October 1st. But despite multiple attempts to obtain an interview with Ashley to discuss what happened that night, she consistently refused to provide a statement. However, at the scene, she made a spontaneous utterance, stating that she couldn't hear because her ears were still ringing, suggesting that her ears were ringing from the gunshot.
Right. I think one of the biggest issues was, like you said, no stippling. So we know, in an attack, if someone was like grabbing your shirt or hurting you or grabbing your wrist or restraining you, they're probably close enough for you to be in danger. Not to say you couldn't be in danger from further. We know she knows how to shoot guns. This was a shot from at least a few feet away. So that just raised some red flags. Doug did live for about an hour, but died later at the hospital with no one he knew by his side. And although she didn't talk, we know her mother did and was adamant that Ashley had tried many times to get help, but that no one would help them. She said that Ashley was working with a DV advocate to create that escape plan I talked about, to get away from Doug once and for all. Ashley had a burner phone, a safe location, and a rental car all set up as part of her escape plan, and that Ashley was going to implement this plan the very next day. But of course, after Doug was shot, his death made that escape plan unnecessary. An escape plan that does not make sense with all that we know. First of all, this was a gated neighborhood, one that Ashley would have had to let Doug into. Once she let him in, she had to let him into her home. And it's also quite convenient that her mother and Emerson went directly to the splash pad, the park, that day when Doug arrived. That way they would be out of the way of danger. It's almost like they knew that the shooting was going to happen. I mean, it doesn't even take an investigator or a rocket scientist or a psychologist to realize, wait a minute, if she has an escape plan, why is she moving all of her stuff into a U-Haul with her estranged husband who lives nearby?
And the investigators are probably right beside you with that skepticism.
It was the next morning when Doug's teenage daughter checked her phone, and to her surprise, she noticed her father hadn't sent her his usual daily Bible verse, which immediately set off an alarm for her, as she knew how important those verses were to Doug. She texted her dad a simple good morning, but didn't get a response. As the day progressed, Eva's concern only grew. She texted her father several times asking where he was and if he was okay. They had a pact or a promise that he would never ignore her or not respond quickly to her calls or her texts because of her fear of abandonment and what had happened to her mother. So this made her very upset. She even began to search the internet for articles or updates about accidents or incidents in Florida. She even typed her dad's name and Ashley's name and whether or not anything bad had happened because she is in another state. However, to her disappointment, she found nothing. When Eva finally found out that her stepmother Ashley had shot and killed her father, she wasn't shocked at all. She was never a fan. We know that. But now both of her parents were dead. In the aftermath of this tragedy, Eva made a name for herself on TikTok under the profile Eva the Freaking Diva. Eva's content often features dark humor and jokes about being the girl with dead parents. And for someone her age, I can see how this would be a perfect outlet, and I don't see anything wrong with it. It's to be expected. A lot of her videos are about her mom and dad dying, and they have gained a significant amount of attention, and rightfully so. So we're going to play some for you so you can hear the story from Eva herself. Now, we are going to edit it just a bit to only mention the things that are relevant to this case.
When I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition. And then, so basically my dad was out of town, and then I came home from school and I found her. So that was the start of a lot of trauma. After that, my dad came home and he specifically told me, don't worry, Eva, I'm never going to get married again. And then after that, he was like, so I'm seeing this girl. And I was like, okay. And then he picked her up from the airport the next day and I met her and he was like, she's super cool. She's a model and a ballerina. And I was like, okay, like cool. She's kind of hot, but I don't see the hype. She's 23, dude. Like, come on. But then I was like, all right, well, you're allowed to date. Like, you're a single man. I get it. And then the next day he was like, we need to have a family meeting. And I was like, no, because we're not a family. And the only thing that you should have to tell me is if you propose. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he goes, we're married. And I was like, what? And I drove myself to my best friend's house and I was like, guys, my dad's actually married to this little skank. And they were like, what? And she was cool at first, but then she wasn't. And here's why. She kind of would like twist my words and make my dad get mad at me. Keep in mind, me and my dad were like very close. I became a little bitch back. So she was being a brat, acting like my mom. And I was like, you're not my mom at all. And my dad was like, no, dude, like you need a mother figure. And I was like, no, I already have a mother figure. So like, I don't need this 23-year-old. Shortly after she moved in, Ashley and my dad came upstairs one night and they were like, hey, you have a little sister on the way. And we were like, what? Ashley's pregnant? Before they got married, he got his tubes tied. After they got married, she was like, you should like reverse it. And my dad was like, okay. And apparently they weren't supposed to be able to have a kid for a while, but then boom, they had a kid. Anyway, so then Ashley decides that she's gonna go live with her mom in Florida for the time being. Like things got better because she was out of the picture for me and my dad. Me and my dad were so freaking close. It was like probably a couple months later, I came home from school and my dad wasn't home, and Ashley's car was just like gone from the driveway. And then I went inside and all of her stuff was gone too. And then there was a note on the bed and I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to pick up all the pieces. I know exactly what happened. So my dad came home, he read the note, and I've never seen that man, other than the time that he cried at my mom's funeral. I could just see like the hurt in his eyes. But then Ashley started calling CPS on my dad. So I would get like my dad was out of town all the time because he traveled a lot. CPS started showing up at my door every single day, which I was like, what the hell? And then cops started showing up too. So I was like, what the heck? Also, a lot of this, like, I did repress like a lot of this time period just because like it was pretty traumatic. I would think I was like 17 at this, 16 or 17. No, I was definitely 17 at this point, or maybe almost 18. I don't know. So then he decided to move to Florida full time because I was at this point 18. Things were great. He texts me every single morning. He texts me a Bible verse. And so that's when I knew he was awake. And when I responded, he knew I was awake. And so then he would call me, check in for the day, see what I needed, see what he could do. I called him, no answer. I texted him a lot, actually. Here, I'll just show you. So, like, this is what I texted my dad that morning because he didn't, like, answer. So, immediate gut feeling, I knew something was wrong because that was so not normal. And then my uncle called me and he was like, hey, Evo, we have some bad news. And I was like, he's dead, isn't he? And they were like, how did you know? And I was like, I just had a gut feeling. Did she kill him? And he was like, yeah, Ashley shot and killed him. And so I kind of just drove to my friend's house after that, and I sat down on his porch and all my friends were there, and I looked at them and I was like, so Ashley killed my dad? And they were like, oh my God, what are we gonna do with you? And I was like, I don't know, I don't have parents anymore.
Okay, everyone, that's part one. It's been a very emotional and intense story thus far, and we're gonna pick back up in part two in the aftermath of Doug's death and everything that began to unravel.
And thank you so much for watching today's video.
We'll see you in our next one. Bye.